Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us. Today we'll be discussing about the concept of morphology, or the study of the words in English. More specifically, morphology is the study of the internal structure of the words in a language. So this is part one of the multiple part series of the videos which are coming in the next weeks. In this video, we'll be discussing about the concept of a morpheme, as well as distinguishing between the different types of morphemes, differences between free morphemes and bound morphemes, lexical morphemes and functional morphemes, as well as the derivational and inflectional morphemes. So before we do any of that, let's talk about the fundamental concept in morphology, the morpheme. So a morpheme is the smallest meaningful unit in a language, and morpheme cannot be broken down into smaller meaningful bits, just individual sounds or sound sequences which in and of themselves are meaningless. Now you might think that the word is the smallest meaningful unit in a language, but any given word may be composed of more than one meaningful element. For example, consider the word cats. Cats is clearly a one word in English, but it has two morphemes, cat plus s. So we all know that cat means it's furry, it has paws, it has whiskers, and it meows, it vomits on the carpet, but there is an s suffix, which is also meaningful because it denotes plural or more than one. Therefore, cats has two morphemes. Let's take another word. How about category? Now, category has just one morpheme. Don't be fooled by the size of the word. Category cannot be broken down into any smaller meaningful bits. Now, you might say, wait a minute, doesn't the word category have the word cat in it? And it does. That's a good observation. However, the meaning of the word cat has nothing to do with the meaning of the word category in English. Therefore, we must conclude that category has just one morpheme. Similarly, you might notice that category has the word gory in it. But again, the meaning of the word gory has nothing to do with the meaning of category. So again, we must say that category has just one morpheme. Here is a tip. Anytime you are working on a word in a language and you're trying to determine how many morphemes are present in that word, ask yourself, does the sum of the parts equal the meaning of the whole? If yes, probably more than one morpheme is. If no, probably just one morpheme is there. Let's take another word. How about categorize? This word has two morphemes. We've already determined that category is the word that is already, it had one morpheme, but in addition, we have this IZE suffix, and that suffix is meaningful because it helps to determine a or form of verb from a noun. So categorize has two morphemes. Let's take another word. How about categorized? Now categorized, which has it is one word, but it has three morphemes. So we have category plus the IZE suffix, but also that D suffix at the end. So it denotes the past tense. Sometimes it spells ED sometimes has another tip for you. Try to forget about how does the word spell. Instead, concentrate on what parts of the word you say carry meaning. If there are any meaningful words, then those could be considered as morphemes. So let's do some more practice here. Take a look at the word on your screen and try to determine how many morphemes are present in each of these words. Now, while you're working, you want to pause the video and take as much time as you need and try to do it. But again, try to figure it out how many morphemes are present in these words. Now let's go over each of these words and see how you did. Let's take this first word, overestimating. It's one word, but it has 3 morphemes. First of all, we had this overestimate, and it has ing as well. One is the prefix over, and the other is the suffix ing, ing. So all of these elements are meaningful: over, estimate, and ing. As a result, overestimating has 3 morphemes. Let's take the next word, keyboard. Keyboard uses the slightly different word formation process, but it has 2 morphemes, key and board. Both of those are meaningful, and you can pretty easily define them and combine those separate words, separate morphemes together to form a new word, keyboard. Keyboard has 2 morphemes. What about cranberry? Cranberry is a bit of a weird word because it has just 1 morpheme. So first of all, you can isolate the berry, and that's pretty clear that we all know how to define that. But then we are left with this cran, and that is very difficult to find. If you look at this word up in the dictionary, you might notice that it actually refers to the context of the fish, but that is not widely used. So cranberry has just 1 morpheme. Again, when you're looking at the word and you're trying to determine how many morphemes are present in that word, ask yourself, does this sum of the part equals to the part of the whole? And in that case of cranberry, well, a cran is saying a quantity of a fish, while berry does not equally means cranberry. So we want to conclude that cranberry has just 1 morpheme, and it happens to have this weird cranberry morph, as it is called in linguistics, a morpheme then. That doesn't really mean it. Now let's take the last word, anti-disestablishmentarianism. Now, this is the very long and perhaps the intimidating word. It's about as exotic as English gets in terms of the number of morphemes that it can pile into 1 word. But it has 6 morphemes. First of all, there is an establish. There are a couple of prefixes before it, anti and dis. Now, after established, that is a stem word, we have meant, Aryan, and ism. And each of those suffixes is meaningful. They are meaningful. If you combine all of them together, we have 6 morphemes. Look at them carefully. Hopefully got some confidence in your ability to identify the number of morphemes present in a given word. Let's talk about different types of morphemes. First, let's talk about free morphemes. Free morphemes are those that can stand alone as type of individual words in a language. So words like cat, vital, and laugh, they are all 1 morpheme. And of course, they are all individual words. They can stand alone as individual words in English. They are all one morpheme. And of course, they are all individual words. They can stand alone as individual words in English. There are two types of free morphemes. There are lexical morphemes and functional morphemes. Lexical morphemes are free morphemes that carry the content of meaning of the utterances or the messages that we say. For example, things like nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs, they're pretty easy to define, and they are in open class, which means that you can add new members to these categories. You can invent a new noun, you can invent a new verb, adjective or adverb if you want, and if it gets popular, it might just get added to the lexicon of English. This is what happens with slang terms of all the time. In fact, we can look back recent history of the word Google, which was coined one long time ago by a mathematician's son. So the story goes, to refer to a very large number. These days, of course, it's undergone a change in meaning, and now it just refers to the search engine. But it provides evidence that it was a recent invented word. It's a lexicon morpheme. It can stand alone as an individual free morpheme. Now let's talk about another kind of a morpheme, that is bound morphemes. They cannot stand alone as individual words. What do you mean by that? Think about it a little. You have done them already in the class. And if I go to the next slide, you will see that bound morphemes cannot stand alone as individual words, as I have said. Therefore, the bound morphemes are affixes. Affixes includes things like prefixes, suffixes, infixes, and circumfixes. Note that in English, we pretty much only use prefixes and suffixes. Those are really examples of that I'm constantly using in this video, but other types of other languages use infixes and some circumfixes regularly. So there are two types of bound morphemes. There are derivational morphemes and inflectional morphemes. Let's talk about each of these in turn. Derivational morphemes serve to create new words in the language, and they also have the capacity to change the part of the speech or lexical category from one to another. If we consider these affixes which are prefixes, and adjunctive er and full that are suffixes, they do some interesting things that tell us that they are derivational morphemes in English. If we take pre, for example, and we add it to the word determine, we get predetermined, which is a new word that would have its both dictionary and meanings separate from that of determine. Now also, if we take, for example, this er suffix, the adjunctive er suffix, then that means something that we can make a noun from a verb. If we could take the word teach or the morpheme teach, and we add er to the end of it, now we have got a teacher, which is a noun, a different lexical category, a different part of the speech. So that's what derivational morphemes can do. They can create new words in the language, or they can possibly change the part of the speech of the lexical category from one to another. Note that all prefixes in English are derivational morphemes, but not all derivational morphemes in English are prefixes. All right, let's talk about the other type of bound morpheme, and that is inflectional morphemes. Inflectional morphemes are sort of like functional morphemes, and that they serve in more grammatical function in a language. So these bound morphemes that are inflectional, they cannot create new words. They don't have the possibility of changing the lexical category of the word from one to another. Instead, they have to do with the grammar, what's going on inside the word type of thing. So in fact, they are really just eight inflectional morphemes in English, and they are displayed up on your screen now. So we have the plural S, which denotes the more than one, which possessive S, often written as in apostrophe and then S. We have the third person singular S, such as in the phrase she walks. We have the past tense ed. We have the suffix ing, which indicates that ongoing action. We have the en, that suffix, which indicates the past participle, sort of like turning broke into broken. We have er, comparative, which is used from cold to colder. It's not the same as the adjunctive er, like turning teach into teacher, because this changes the lexical category from one to another. But that er in colder, it's doing something more grammar-like. And in the last of these is the superlative, the est, such as the word coldest. So they are just 8 inflectional morphemes in English. But other languages may use a lot more inflectional morphology. Well, that brings to the end of the video. Hopefully you are going to gain some confidence to identify the number of morphemes present in the given word, as well as how to distinguish between different types of morphemes. So keep checking, and in this week, I'll be posting other videos related to morphemes and word formation. Thank you for watching.